cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our spoiler review, reaction, commiseration, theories of episode 6 of the Loki series called For All Time, Always.
Yes. I find it interesting that it's spelled Always, because it could be always,
Yeah.
or always.
Always. Yeah. This is going to be a two-pronged... Oh, it's going to be spoiler heavy. So you've been warned. They've been all spoiler heavy, and we're coming from it from the MCU point of view. We're going to have a lot of MCU timeline conversations towards the end. So, and some speculation and stuff.
Maybe.
We'll do our best to figure out.
Where's our red string?
Yeah. I'm going to start doing red string after all of these because fucking Kevin Feige. I want to talk about the episode first overall.
Okay.
I've seen thumbnails. I will put thumbnails. I'll say it this way. Of other reviews that happened in this episode, and I think a lot of people. I have not watched anything because I wanted to go in as knowing as little as possible going into this and watching it this evening and not at midnight last night and that kind of thing.
We have jobs.
We have jobs, unfortunately. Not that I've gone the last few days, but whatever. But it seems like there may have been some unease with the way this episode was overall.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it has to do was there really wasn't a big climactic fight battle.
Right.
The big climactic fight battle was the decision to have free will and what you do with it. Which is what the show was about the entire time.
Right. And to be fair, I mean, Loki Prime, Tom Hiddleston Loki, has in like the Avengers movies and Thor and everything, has never been a fighter. He is a magician,
He's
trickster, sorcerer,
Yeah.
whatever. So he's never been all about the big hand-to-hand. Now him and Sylvie did have a bit of a
good sword fight.
Yeah. But like, who was supposed to be doing the fighting? Because it wasn't going to be him. So was it going to be her?
Right. I appreciate this episode a lot because, like I said, this whole show has been about Loki's redemption. The 2012 Loki, 2014 Loki from the Avengers. That 2012. What's time?
Right.
His redemption arc, because the other Loki that we got in the main timeline with Thanos got his redemption. So we had to redeem Loki and have him come to grips with who he was and that he can be loved. So that was part of the show. But the other part of the show was the choice of what you do when you have free will and what that means. And the TVA and ultimately who remains, which we'll get into all of that in a minute, taking away that opportunity from a lot of people, a lot of variants throughout the multiverse, and if is it good to take that away with a benevolent ruler who is trying to do the best for all of the timelines, or should you have free will to make your own mistakes and allow things to happen? And I didn't understand that was what this show was about until this episode.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was really well laid out.
Yeah, I mean, the whole time you think that first, the timekeepers, and then when you realize it's not the timekeepers, then whoever's behind them, you think he's the big bad. But he's not the big bad. It's the other hymns.
The other versions,
that are potentially the big bad.
He is the lesser of multiple Weevils. And if you understand that reference, you're at the right show.
You like Paul Bettany.
You like Paul Bettany. We need to get Russell Crowe in the MCU. He's in
DC.
He's Kal-El's dad. So I with that kind of discussion, I really liked it. This wasn't the big actiony show like we got with Falcon and Winter Soldier. Sorry, Captain America and White Wolf, and it's a very different kind of action than what we got with Wanda.
Right.
And so it was a very different story, but it really made you spend time and question what free will is and what it means to have free will and what you do with free will and
at what expense.
And all that kind of stuff. And I think, WandaVision was about the grieving process, and Falcon and Winter Soldier was about racism and PTSD, and this was about redemption and what free will actually does to people.
Right.
Or not having free
or
will.
what you could do with it or not do with it. Yeah. Yep.
I think some people are going to complain about the big climactic monologue that we got with Who Remains, with the camera work, with it panning in and out. And I think people are going to really struggle with that. I got it as it was him as the camera would pan back and put in Loki and Sylvie in the frame. It was almost like, here's your chance to take the reins and be the new head of the TVA.
Yeah.
And then when they would kind of question it, it would go back to him, and now it's
right.
now it's on him.
Or it could also represent their 2 points of view, right? That Loki was kind of being drawn in for all the right reasons.
Right.
He was buying into what he was saying, and Sylvie wasn't. Like, everything, she said it multiple times, you're lying. Everything you say is a lie.
Everything, yeah.
So she's pulling back, and Tom Hiddleston's Loki is being brought in.
Yeah. And the fact that Sylvie never had that arc of redemption or love or whatever, she never had it, and so she never was going to be able to accept whatever was coming out of He Who Remains is
well, and what she got was 5 minutes ago in the show, and from the Loki that always lies.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I love that they point that out.
Yeah.
You can't trust, and I can't be trusted.
Right.
And I love that that was actually the catalyst of their fight.
Yep.
That realization was what came out of it. Okay. It wasn't Kang. It was a version of Kang who was the keeper behind
He Who Remains.
They said, I've been called He Who Remains. I've been called Conqueror. I've been called God. I've been called Jerk.
It wasn't God.
It wasn't
I don't
God.
remember
It
what
was something else. But they made a point of listing all the things that he is,
and I think we'll get to meet all those.
We're going to meet several of them. We may have met one at the end of this episode, or at least saw a statue. So we as an audience have been saying it's Kang, it's Kang, it's Kang, it's Kang, and we weren't wrong. We weren't necessarily right either.
Well, and you've either been saying Kang the Conqueror or He Who Remains.
Right.
Those were the two
most likely
theories, and I mean, the whole time I was like, well, it's not going to be either of them because it's Marvel, and they love to take everything you think you know and go,
yeah.
And actually, they did it again and made them both the same person.
Right. And they've done this throughout the MCU, was taking things and points from the comics and sprinkling it in and adding a little bit of new stuff. And they did that with Black Widow, and some people were having a problem with that. I thought it was a really good choice, but whatever.
They explained the whole thing in this episode.
Right.
Every comic book you've ever read.
Yeah.
Every show you've ever watched, every movie you've ever watched could be on any number of infinite timelines, so they can all be different stories, and it's okay.
Yes. The only couple other things I want to talk about is they Mobius showing back up to kind of go at
to burn the place down.
To burn the place down. Ravonna Renslayer is packing. They have their moment of, how dare you prune me, and of course you're the one who were able to figure out how to come back, and them figuring out like the TVA agents themselves being told really what's going on. They go to the high school where Renslayer is actually still there, so she is the Renslayer at the Judge Renslayer at the TVA is somebody else, and
No, she is the Renslayer before she got
pruned.
plucked
Yeah.
put into the TVA, because everybody in the TVA is a variant.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
it's
Yeah.
her original timeline, her original life, and she has no idea what's going on. It's kind of interesting that she's a principal, but
Right.
because she's a judge
and controlling everything.
yeah, and she was a principal. But that explains the pen with the, I was trying to think, Hamilton? What is the
Franklin Roosevelt
Franklin High or whatever,
school,
on
whatever.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw some stuff where people are comparing this episode to Matrix Reloaded, the one where he meets the timekeeper,
The gatekeeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
The architect or whatever. Yeah,
architect. That's it. Yeah. Kind of where he meets the architect, and it's interesting, and it's also kind of Mobius and the red pill or the blue pill, right? For as far as the questions,
Yeah.
or the choices that you have, take the red pill or the blue pill, except it's two people, two versions of the same person.
Yeah.
And he's offering, they're both on different sides of what they want to happen for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Loki started
Yeah,
out
yeah,
the
yeah.
episode or the series wanting to rule the world, rule everything, and Sylvie just wants justice, and so, or vengeance or whatever
yeah.
you want to call what she's doing, and so basically that's what he offers them. He offers them the choice between ruling or vengeance, and so they're not going to agree. That
Right.
they haven't agreed the whole time, so why would they agree?
They haven't
So it's like
agreed,
he
and I
knew.
think only very small amount has Sylvie actually started to trust Loki, and when Loki actually says, "Hey, let's think about this," her heart's broken at that point in time, to kind of like just the concept of hey, you. It's been about the throne. It's been you about being a trickster the entire time, and he's trying to explain to her like, no, this is a huge decision.
Right.
What we're about to do is going to change everything. We need to at least think about it.
Yeah. Well, and
she's single-minded enough that she can't see that.
and they have, between the two of them, have managed to avoid the what's going to happen when we get there conversation.
Yeah.
And Sylvie has pretty much led the charge in, Loki's pretty much just been like, I'm going along to help or protect or whatever.
Right.
But she's been the one driving the charge to get there, and they never stopped to think about what that was going to look like once they got there.
If the dog chasing the car, what happens when you catch the
Right.
car? That's
Right.
what that whole thing was about.
Yeah.
And spoilers, the timeline is now fucked.
Yeah.
I love the circle of the timeline outside the castle at the end of time,
Branching off,
and it's fine,
yeah.
and then it starts to branch out
Yeah.
into what the galaxy actually looks like. A lot of people are saying it was the microverse or the quantum realm, and it's probably not wrong because it was a lot of the same colors and stuff like that, but just the timeline splinting off, it looks like the galaxy as a whole,
Yeah.
kind of when you look at the
it did.
galaxy and
Yep.
stuff. We got the Loki Sylvie kiss that we wanted, except it was a misdirect, so Sylvie could get the true timekeeper Dory open thingy, whatever,
Right.
ring of destiny, which she kept after she killed. I'm going to go with Kang because that's easier to say than He Who Remains. She kept it.
Yeah.
But she was still there at the end of time when the episode ended.
Right.
And Loki was in the TVA, and his scene that Loki has by himself of like, I put myself out there for somebody and she didn't accept it, and now I got to figure out how to fix this.
He cried full on tears twice in this episode.
Because Tom Hiddleston is a badass.
Yep, he's amazing.
And then when Loki goes to try to Mobius and Hunter B-15, they're trying to figure out like the timeline is it's fucked. And when Loki goes to talk to them in the archive, he like we made a mistake. We shouldn't have done this. We have to go back and we have to fix it. And they don't know who he is.
Yep.
Which is probably the most heartbreaking thing of the entire episode.
Right.
Not the kiss that was the misdirect and the killing of the big
So
bad.
him and Sylvie are basically the only two people in the multiverse as of right now who know that something has happened.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I find that interesting, what that could mean going forward.
Right. Now, you would assume that the Kangs are going to know because they're the reason why everything kind of got broken and then we had to go to the one true timeline to begin with. So you assume on down the line they're going to know because they wanted to conquer each other's timeline or whatever. And then you're going to assume Doctor Strange is going to know.
Right, because he is connected to the Time Stone.
To the Time Stone, so and then it'll be interesting to see what Tom Holland's Spider-Man, like, is he gonna get the Peter tingle or what? Because he's involved in this with the next...
Something's gonna happen with that, yeah.
Well, isn't it in the name?
It's No Way Home.
No Way Home, but, I mean, they have pretty much said that it's going to have to do with...
It's all been said, but it's like every rumor is there's multiple Spider-Man and we're getting all the Sinister Sticks from all the different movies and stuff, and so so all of that, so it's all but they have been said that it's going to be effective.
And then I also saw somebody pointed out, I was like, oh yeah, what if now that's like real? I mean, it's cartoon, but what if we're going to, instead of just fun, hey, what if? No, this is going to be actually examining different timelines because they're all broke.
I said when that trailer, my eye is making me crazy. I'm sorry, guys.
Take it out, feed it.
I said when that trailer dropped that it felt like we've been teasing the multiverse. We've been like talking about it, easing people into the idea of multiple timelines and multiple different versions of the same character and different places. They've kind of been like sprinkling it in here and there more and more as we go along. And then Loki, I almost called it Loki Vision.
I called it Loki Vision earlier.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Loki.
Previously on Loki Vision.
Yeah. Straight out opens up the multiverse.
Right.
So I've been saying that you've been sprinkling it in. Now let's examine what that means with the multiverse within what if with all these different ideas. And then when we get to Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, that all of that will be it'll be easier for the audience who don't understand what the multiverse means.
Right.
Can explain it a little bit better.
Right. And they can reference it in the movies going forward.
Yeah.
They can reference, they can be in the timeline where,
Sharon Carter.
Yeah, Sharon Carter is Captain America, and Hawkeye is the Hulk, and all that stuff.
Right. So, we were talking about this before we started this review when we were cleaning up dinner. Because the timeline is so screwed up, I had to go look up where we're at in the MCU timeline, as we said. So WandaVision takes place about 3 weeks after the end of Endgame.
Right.
And then Far From Home, when Peter goes to Europe and we have to deal with Mysterio and all that, it's about 8 months after that.
Okay, so
that's
we're
all.
Year after Endgame.
Yeah, all of that happens in 2023 in the MCU timeline.
Okay.
And so, with all of that happening within the MCU timeline, we know that Captain America and the White Falcon. That works too. He got wings. But that also takes place shortly after what happened in Endgame. I think it's actually like 3 months, 2 months or something. 3 months.
It's
right after everything happens.
Yeah.
And so all of that has been. So we, as the viewer in the real world, have been trying to play catch up with the MCU.
Right. But then the Loki in this show is actually from 2013 or whatever, when 2012, when Avenger, at the end of the first Avengers, when he grabs the Tesseract and goes back.
However, he's been in the TVA for who knows where,
how long.
Right.
So now we have no idea what time it is in the main timeline.
So the main timeline, I think right now, when we get to, I think the next thing that comes out outside of What If is Shang-Chi in September.
Right.
So,
and Shang-Chi could take place again.
It could take place before the snap, after the snap. Yeah. It could be congruent with the timeline as it sits.
It kind of feels like it will probably be in line with Falcon and Winter Soldier, because we got hints that the Madripoor and all that stuff. So you kind of feel like Shang-Chi was happening over here while Falcon and Winter Soldier was happening over here, and they kind of converged a little bit, but nobody ever actually met.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting way of doing storytelling, because they didn't necessarily do that in the beginning of the MCU time. In Phase 1, they started kind of sprinkling it in Phase 2, but Phase 3 was really when they started doing Ant-Man is going on at the same time as Infinity Wars, the same time as
right. And Captain Marvel is here, but she's also back there.
Right. So with the timeline that we have, with Shang-Chi coming out next, we have Eternals in November. We have Spider-Man, the multiverse of Far From Can't Get Home. That whole thing feels like it's going to be, at least with Shang-Chi, I think Shang-Chi is going to be much more connected to what's going on with Black Widow, with Thaddeus Ross, and the building of the Thunderbolts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I feel that that's going to be one storyline that's going on over here. Like I've been pointing out, like, nobody's talking about this. We're talking about the multiverse, because the multiverse is the big shiny whatever. And you've got the Thunderbolts being built down here, and nobody's really paying attention to that. And I think Shang-Chi is going to be connected to that more. The Eternals is where it is going to go off the rails, because they're old gods.
Yeah.
They're old aliens.
Yeah, they've been here for a long time. I kind of feel like the next 3 movies, because then Spider-Man comes out in December, right? So for the rest of this year, we have 3 Marvel movies, and I kind of feel like Spider-Man is going to catch us up to when the timeline splits.
Right.
So these next 3 movies will get us up to where we are ending with Loki.
And then I was just reading, so with everything that happened with this, everything that's happened with WandaVision, oh, by the way, it wasn't Wanda who broke the timeline, it was Sylvie. Whatever. But the idea of Doctor Strange and having it there in March, I think is what they said. There's now rumors floating around everywhere that Tom Hiddleston was secretly on set. So the conversation of Loki going to Strange and saying, we messed up, we broke the timeline.
Yeah.
And Strange going, yeah, I know, it's your fault. And him going, it wasn't me, it was me, but it was another me. It's complicated. timey-wimey, big ball of timey-wimey. But if we know that Florence Pugh is going to be in the Hawkeye series, we know that Tom Hiddleston's going to be. We believe that Tom Hiddleston's going to be in Doctor Strange. So a lot of people are saying after Endgame, how are you going to keep the stakes so high after what happened with Thanos and the snap and the unsnapping and the big battle? Or whatever.
Yep.
How you do it is you have even more connectivity between all the different shows and things, and have people who are going to be from one place to the other and be connective storytelling. If you have told me 5 years ago, 7 years ago, that Loki was going to be the big connective tissue between what was essentially the end of the Infinity Saga and what's going to be the beginning of the multiverse saga, which is they'll call it Kang's saga, whatever. But that idea of him being the one that does it, I would have said there's no way.
Yeah.
And you still have Thor: Love and Thunder out there. You still have the Hawkeye series out there. You still have all the Disney Armor Wars, Secret Invasion, or Secret Wars. What they're going to do with Secret Wars and like all the people they're bringing in for that show is mind-boggling. And that's just the TV stuff. That's not including the big movie stuff. Oh yeah.
Right.
By the way, they're doing Blade. How's a vampire killer gonna?
Well, now they have all these multiverses.
Right,
They have
right.
all these universe. Like I said, they can have Hawkeye be Hulk, and they can do.
Peter Parker is Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
and-
they can do what all these different stories. I kind of feel like Thor: Love and Thunder is not going to be in. I don't. Well, I mean, I guess maybe it is because now there's a woman who's Thor instead of
yeah.
instead of a man.
And that's very interesting when you start laying that out, because the Guardians are in that too. And you still have Guardians 3 out there too.
Yeah.
And you have the Gamora, the Gamora from 2012 now with the Guardians who've been through everything. And you have them with Thor and everything that's going on there. And you have Jane Foster that's now the new Thor. So now you're playing with all of that stuff. And then you have Tika doing Tika's like thing, whatever. So, but the series overall, I really like this series. I think WandaVision's probably my favorite of the three that we've gotten so far. I'm just laying some groundwork saying What If is probably going to be my favorite when we get there, just because of everything that's going to possibly go on there. But WandaVision was probably my favorite. This is probably second favorite.
Yeah.
I think ultimately I would have liked Captain America and the White Wolf a lot more if they actually were able to do the full story that they were able to do without having to do the cuts and stuff like that. I still like the series a lot.
Yeah.
I still thought it was really, really well done. But if we're going to, it's the modern era and I hate doing it, but if we have to rank things or whatever, I really like what they've done in this, but it's probably in the middle of the three so far with what we've got.
Yeah, I liked them. I like them all a lot for very different reasons because they're very different shows. But if I had to rank them, I would put WandaVision first, mostly for me because of the just nostalgia berries, the member berries.
I think we haven't talked about this for WandaVision, but I think for you specifically, you have the member berries and all that stuff, and that was a really good touch. But you lost somebody, so there's a little bit of connectiveness to that too. That you maybe not necessarily there on the surface, but there's that. I've been through this process of grief and everything, and so I think that was probably, I think for both of us that was the show. Like, that was not the show I think they wanted to start off with this next phase of the universe of the MCU, but I'm glad that that was the one. Yeah. Because I think if it was Falcon and Winter Soldier, it would have gotten lost with everything else. Oh, actually, Black Widow was actually supposed to be the first thing back.
Right. And I could see Falcon and Winter Soldier having come out first as far as the Disney Plus shows, but because they had to go back and do so much editing and some reshoots, it would make I mean, I don't know that was the order they were supposed to be in. Maybe they were always supposed to be in this order, but it would make sense if that one was supposed to be first and they had to push it.
Because it feels like Black Widow, and it feels like the
if it was Black
cinematic-
Widow and then it was Falcon and Winter
And then it was
Soldier,
supposed to be
you kind of still got the
WandaVision,
spy
yeah.
thing going on,
Yeah.
and then you go to WandaVision and it's like, what? Everything's going crazy,
Yep,
and then
and
you
then
bring
you
in
got-
Loki and it's still going crazy, and you bring in What If and it's still going crazy.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. But overall, I really like the series. We'll probably rewatch it at some point in time.
Yep.
Fairly soon. I think that's it for this episode. Oh, and our theories of what the timeline is going to be. We'll be doing more as we go along. We might do a What If week to week. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
And then, stay tuned for all of the trailer reactions and movie reviews
Yep.
and stuff that we do.
We went and saw Falcon and Winter Soldier. Black Widow, it was amazing. Go
Black
see
Widow.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let us know what you thought of Loki. This episode, the final episode called For All Time Always. In the comments down below, please be nice. That is a requirement around here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and follow us on all the social media stuff: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Because we're modern people. What modern? We don't know, but what's time? Until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.